Over the years, over Purim, we've even had a little bit of a minig in my house. I don't know if any of you have been there when we did this, that we would take a Megillah Esther, and we would pick a pasuk, and we would just go around the table, and everyone would say what they feel like the pasuk is saying, or what we can learn from the pasuk. Very interesting ha'aras. Depending on how far into Purim it was, they got more and more interesting, the ha'aras. But it's important after Purim sometimes to gather your thoughts and to see, to pull out some of the interesting points and to write them down and think about them. So I want to take a few small, I shouldn't say small, nothing small, short, ha'aras on various psukim and inyanim in the Megillah. A little bit different than our usual style. But I think like parpara'os that would be enjoyable to go into Purim with. Okay, for now, we'll do this for now. Maybe on Purim we'll continue, but this is at least a good start. There was a question that came up, I think Rabbi Wisnicki actually asked me this question on a Purim once. I was very, very intrigued from the question. I remember that I couldn't stop thinking about it. Sometimes when you're drinking a little bit, your brain gets stuck on something. Has that ever happened to you? I think my brain was stuck on this. Sometimes you find in the Megillah a pasuk that comes twice, like a similar pasuk that comes twice, and one of them is a pasuk that's negea to Haman and negea to Mordechai. Just 1 second. Okay, so Mordechai finds out about the terrible decree, and he comes to the palace gates, and Esther sends clothing, because ki ein lavoi el shar hamelech b'levush sak, and Mordechai tells Hasach everything that happened. And the Lashon, Perek Daled, Pasuk Zayin, the Lashon is Vayaged loy Mordechai eis kol asher karahu. Mordechai said to Hasach everything that happened to him. Eis kol asher karahu. Those words, eis kol asher karahu, are also uttered about Haman. Because later on, when Haman has the, is the word ignoble? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yes.
Okay, that's a good word, no?
Yes.
Opportunity to, thank you, the opportunity to walk Mordechai on the horse, kachas alavush v'yasasus kasher dibarta v'aseichen l'Mordechai ha'Yehudi ha'yoshev v'shar ha'melech. So that was a pretty humiliating experience, especially getting the garbage dumped on from his garbage that you understand. When you were in kindergarten, it was garbage, but you understand that it's a lashon nikiyah, and then the ultimate suicide of his daughter, and Haman comes home, and he tells Zeresh what happened. Yud Gimel, Vav Yud Gimel. Vayisaper Haman leZeresh Ishtay ulechol oyhavav eis kol asher karahu. Naftali, you hear that? Yeah. 2 eis kol asher karahus. One for Mordechai, one when Mordechai is saying over what happened, and one when Haman is saying over what happened. Haloi davarhu. Such a good question. Okay, you could compliment Rabbi Wisnicki on it. Okay, and then we will moisif to that question. What kind of thing is that to say on a Mordechai Atzadik? It's called Asher Karahu. Karahu certainly carries the idea of mikra, happenstance. It happened to happen. Is Mordechai saying that this happened to happen? It's Kol Asher Asa Hashem. It's Kol Asher Karo for Haman to talk that way. That it happened. Look what happened to him. Did I have bad luck today? Okay, I expect that out of a Haman. You expect that out of a Mordechai to say such a lashon as Kol Asher Karo? Good kasha, right? So I have an unbelievable ha'ara here. I think it's mamash unbelievable. and it's a good reminder. In the Haftarahs, it's been in Sefer Yeshaya, Perek Mem Tes, is the Haftarahs of the Shiva de Nechemta. The pasuk says, "Hasishkach isha ula meirachem es ben bitna." Does a mother forget her baby? Does she forget to have rachmanis on her child? Because Vatomer Tzion Azovani Hashem, right? That's how it starts. Tzion says Hashem forgot about us. So the Navi says, does a mother forget her child? Gam eilas yishachachna. Even these might forget. A mother maybe could forget her child. The anoichi lo yeshkachech, and I will never forget you. That's what Hashem says. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful psukim. The pasuk shot in the psukim is so beautiful. But the Medrash darshans on this pasuk in Yeshaya that gam eilas yishachachna. Thanks so much, Shua. Gam eilas yishachachna is referring to the words that Klal Yisrael said by the Egel of Eila Elohecha Yisrael Asher Hayitzei Sicha Me'eretz Mitzrayim. That Klal Yisrael, when they saw the Egel, they worshipped the Egel and they gave the Egel the credit for taking them out of Mitzrayim. And the Anoichi is referring to Anoichi Hashem Elokecha Asher Hayitzei Sicha Me'eretz Mitzrayim, the Aseres HaDibros. And the meaning of the pasuk, according to the Medrash, is Gam Eilas Yishachachna. Eile Hashem will forget. When you worship the Egel, that Hashem will forget. But the Anoichi, but when you makabel the Torah, that Hashem won't forget. Hashem, Kaviyachal, has a selective memory. He remembers the good things that you did, and he forgets the bad things that you did. What a deal, right? You know what the pshat is? Does it make sense? HaKadosh Baruch Hu's, wait, what's the emes? Why does Hashem forget Eile Elohecha Yisrael, and he doesn't forget Anoichi Hashem Elokecha? Why is that? And the pshat is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows that the ikar of a yid is to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The ikar ratzain of a yid, the deepest desire of a yid is to be an Eved Hashem. And there's nothing that the nefesh, that the neshama of a yid wants more than to be davuk b'Hashem. Nothing. Okay? You know, I'll give you a mashal to like just like the sense that I'm trying to bring up. You know, we say LeDavid and Elul, right? So we say Achas sha'alti me'is Hashem oisa avake shivti be'is Hashem kol yemei chayei lachas ois b'noyim Hashem u'levaker be'echalei. Imagine you have a guy who comes into shul, does not learn a word. In fact, he happened to come into shul, like b'mikra, he happened to come into shul, and he's saying LeDavid. Maybe, you know, maybe he has yard side, he's davening for the Yamud or something. It's like, Achas sha'alti me'es Hashem oisa avake shivti be'veis Hashem kol yimei. And you're thinking to yourself, liar. There's plenty of things you're being bevakesh, and one of them is not shivti be'veis Hashem. I don't struggle with that when I hear things like that. Because it's 100% emes. Shaila is if the guy himself realizes that it's emes. Because you want to know what his deepest desire is? Every one of us and every yid that we know, the deepest desire of every yid is Shifti beveis Hashem kol yemei chayei lachas ois b'noyim Hashem. That's who we are. That's our essence. And that's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu could say, when you were Oved Avodah Zarah, that I could forget, because that's not you. There's I don't know why I'm in a tangent-y mood tonight, but the interesting thing that there's a book that was written by by Gratz. Is that how you pronounce it, Dr. Hack? Gratz. I pronounce it. Okay. He was a German Jewish scholar of non-Orthodox persuasion.
Correct.
Okay, and he wrote a history of the Jews, and his history of the Jews is laced with like the kind of talk that's Kaifer b'Torah sheb'Baal Peh, and is critical of Chachamim, and so on and so forth. And he says things there that are that you wouldn't know that they're kfira or that they're not wrong because you don't know Kol HaTorah Kula, and he's a smart guy. But he was up against actually I think it was an old chavrusa of his. What? Rav Hirsch. Yeah, Rav Shamshafal Hirsch wrote an analysis of that book. Okay? By the way, when we came to this shul, there was an old history of the Jews here. How could there not be? Yeah. It's very valuable, by the way. I don't want to say, but I have in my head maybe that we made a few $100s off it. But anyway, maybe not allowed to make money off it. I don't know. But anyway, Rav Shamshon Hirsch writes like a critique of it, and he tears. Wow, oh my gosh, he tears it apart. You know, he talks about the Shammai's personality. Shammai had a severe personality. Gratz writes about, and Rav Shamshon Hirsch says, well, there are, I'm making up the numbers because I don't know them, but he's like, well, there are 340, Machlekes Hillel and Shammai in Bavli, and there's this amount in Yerushalmi, and this amount in Safra Sifri and Mechilta, and none of them seem to indicate that Shammai was a severe personality, except for that one Gemara in Bama Madlikin. In fact, Shammai is the one that said, having Makabel is Kaladim is Sefer Panim Yafos. So, and then Rav Shamshon says, a mashal. That's the get to our shir. Rav Shamshon Hirsch says that it's a mashal to a little bit like a caricature, like a caricature, as Dr. Hack says. Like when they do like when you get these cartoon pictures made of you. Have you ever had that? These tourist attractions, you get these cartoon pictures made of you. So he says, they'll always take a feature and they'll make it huge. Like suddenly in the picture you'll have huge ears or a huge nose or something. It's part of the funniness of that style that they'll exaggerate very much certain features. So Shamshon says that's what Gratz did. He took one story about Shammai and made that the whole feature. That's one little piece in a huge picture of who Shammai was. And that's really the point here in this Nekuda. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, yeah, it happens to be that you served Avodah Zarah when you did the Egel. But that's not part of the picture of who you are. That's a davar arai. That's not the essence of who you are. But anoichi, this that you're makabel the Torah, does heist yid. That's what a yid is. So that's why the pasuk says, gam eilas yishachachna ve'anoichi lo yeshkachech. So I wanted a taina by the Purim Suda a year or two ago. I wanted a taina like this. Mikra means it's not the ikr. That's not the ikr hanhaga. Right? It's a mikra. Doesn't mean that it happened by mistake, but it means it's not the ikr hanhaga. So Mordechai comes to Hasach and says, the Jews are in trouble. There's a sakana here. Terrible things are happening. The Goyim have the upper hand. Eis kol asher karahu. That's not really the Asad of Klal Yisrael. That's b'mikra, not meaning that it by happenstance, but that's not the essence of the relationship between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Klal Yisrael, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings Yisurim and Tzaras. B'mikra, it's like a davar ara, it's a davar chitzoni. So when Mordechai is describing the tzara for Klal Yisrael, he calls it a mikra. What? Yeah. So, but Haman's the opposite. Haman, suddenly the tide starts to turn, and Haman realizes that as Zeresh makes sure to point out to him that the tide is turning towards Klal Yisrael. Imizera HaYehuda Mordechai, right? So Haman comes in and says, "I had such a terrible day," but what he's saying is, don't think that means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu really loves the Jews. No, it's a mikra. Happened to me. Really, I'm Aleikim have the upper hand. Punkt, I happen to have a bad day today. It's like everyone's watching the market these days, the people that are pro, everything's going to get better. So I know the market is falling. But don't worry, that's a mikra. The bad stuff is going to go up. And the critics are like, no, this is the beginning of a new, right? What you hold as a mikra and what you hold as the ikr depends a lot on your hashkafa. So, Rav David Yamaska, so that's the two, Eis Asher Karoz, the one of Mordechai, and the one of...
They answer back that he's wrong?
What?
They answer back,
yeah, that's the whole point. In Bizera, Yehuda, and Mordechai, no. Get a clue. This is not a mikra. This is the situation. Okay, that was Ha'ara number 1 for tonight. Ha'ara number 2. Perek Ches. I like sometimes talking about these psukim later on in the Megillah that we don't get such clarity in necessarily. They're later on. After the banging's already started. The Haman's already started. So Haman is hung, And the Melech Achashverosh gives Mordechai and Esther Beis Haman, right? She gives Vayoimahu Perek Ches Pasuk Aleph Vayoimahu Nosan HaMelech Achashverosh LeEsther HaMalkas Beis Haman Tzair HaYehudim. And then the Melech gives his signet ring to Mordechai, and Esther appoints Mordechai to be the in charge of the Beis Haman, the estate of Haman. And then Esther comes. Now there's still a gzeira that the Jews are going to be killed on the 13th day of Adar. That didn't go away yet. So Esther still has some business to take care of. So Esther comes into Mordechai, Pasuk Gimel, Perek Ches Pasuk Gimel, and Esther starts to speak to the Melech, and she falls by the feet of the king, and she starts to cry. Vatef, she starts to cry. Vatischanin lo, and she begs him to take away the bad that Haman and the machshava that he was chayshav al haYehudim, to take it away. The Melech puts out the Sharvet Hazav. Esther stands up, and she says, "Im ala Melech toiv." If it's good in the eyes of the Melech. And it doesn't say Melech Achashverosh, as we know. Melech in the Megillah's Maram is also on Malko Shel Olam. Im ala Melech toiv. Ve'matzasi chein lefanov. And I found chein in front of him, which also if it's Hashem, like she knows that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was mekabel her tefillas. She's in a place of ratzain, klapi HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'kosher hadavar lefnei HaMelech. V'toiva ani be'enov. Yikosev lehashiv es hasfarim. Take back the svarim. Take back the svarim. Haman sent out svarim to kill out Klal Yisrael. Take it back. Undo that the svarim. Machsheves Haman ben Amidasa asher kasav la'abed es haYehudim. Ki echacha uchal v'roisi bara asher yimsa sami. How can I watch? You saved me, thank you. But how can I watch this happen to my nation? Now listen to the response that the Melech gives to Esther. And tell me if it follows in your mind, okay? So the Melech says to Esther and to Mordechai, he says, I gave the Beis Haman to Esther. And I hung Haman. So now write whatever you want, but I can't revoke. You could just write a new gzeira. I know that you gave the house of Haman to Esther. What does it got to do with this? The Perek started, the house of Haman was given to Esther. It was like a political statement? Like, of course you know I'm on your side. I gave the house of Haman to Esther. It seems he could have just said, I cannot rescind the gzeira. Write whatever you want. No, it's a good question. What's it? No, I gave the house of Haman to Esther, and I hung Haman. But I can't rescind it. So send out what you want. What's the hemshech here? So also on a Purim, a number of years ago, I had the following thought that stood the test of becoming sober afterwards, after Purim, and still seemed like a good word. And that is that very often when we have a tzara, we ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu to take the tzara away. Take away the tzara. Lahashiv es hasfarim. I don't want this difficulty. I don't want this nisayan. Take the problem away. Esther comes and says, take away the svarim. And it's even Mayrich in the Psukim. Take away the svarim. Machsheves Haman ben Amidasa. Like, I don't want this tzara. Now, imagine that the tzara would never have happened. Had the tzara not happened, had Haman not decided to destroy Klal Yisrael, the Mechias Amalek that took place in those days would never have happened. Haman would have never been hung, and the Beis Haman, which represents a lot, you can imagine, the house of Haman, would not have been given over to Mordechai and Esther. And that's the musar that the Melech is responding to Esther and to Mordechai. When you go through a tzara, you don't just want the tzara to go away. You steig from the tzara. You want a Yeshua, but you don't regret the tzara. The tzara is also part of what you come away with in the end. That's what he's saying. I gave you the Beis Hama. You see that the tzara itself provides something. So I can't be machzer es hasfarim. We could be mamshech the gzeira. We could do something weiter. We could bring a Yeshua. But all of us in this room have been through our nisyonos in life. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu should bring us all Yeshuas. But the nisyonos that we have are part of what makes us us. And they're part of how HaKadosh Baruch Hu delivers to us what we need to become, to be Zeichel Ha'olam Haba, and to get the zechuyos that we need, and to become the people that we're meant to become. We don't want to reject that. We don't want to reject that like that. I always say over that when I was in Eretz Yisrael, I was close to a mishpacha that the Rosh HaMishpacha, he was in South America, he was in Rosh Chayil in South America for that year, and while he was in South America, he had a stroke. They brought him back on a special hospital plane, and they have these ways of bringing hospital patients back to Eretz Yisrael. It was a very, very, very difficult time, and it was a very, very long recovery. But at some point, to make a long story short, we don't have time for the whole thing right now, but to make a long story short, at some point he made a Sudas Haidah. And when he made his Sudas Haidah, he got up, and he said, Alma ani modeh. What am I being grateful for now? That HaKadosh Baruch Hu made me better? That's what I'm thanking Hashem, that He made me better? Hashem also made me sick. So he said, I'm here to thank Hashem by this Sudas Haidah that He made me sick and that He made me better. He said a caterpillar finds itself one day in prison. There's a cocoon around it. It can't move. It's dark. It's in prison. It used to be able to climb up and down trees and go wherever it wanted and had freedom. And now it's in prison. It's dark. And then one day that cocoon breaks and the caterpillar became a butterfly and it could fly. The caterpillar never resents the cocoon. It thanks Hashem that it got out of the cocoon, and it thanks Hashem that it got into the cocoon. So that's what this Talmud Chacham said. I thank Hashem that I was brought into the tzara, and I thank Hashem for the hatzalah from the tzara. But I am not the same person before I got sick. I'm a different person today. I'm a butterfly, not a caterpillar. And that's what the Melech is telling Esther Hamalka. You don't want to take the tzara away. You want a Yeshua from the tzara, but ein lahashiv. Don't take it away. We don't want to erase it. We want to steig through it. Okay, I think we have time for one more. Okay, maybe another time is we'll be able to do some more, but this is one more short ha'ara before Ma'ariv. One of the interesting psukim in the Megillah is that at the time that the Yeshua came and the Yad of Klal Yisrael was Biyad Rama and Mordechai ve'Esther were Hailech v'Gadel, it says V'Rabim me'amei ha'oretz misyahadim. There was a Umais ha'olam. There were Gerim. It was Nitaisev Gerim li Yisrael. V'Rabim me'amei ha'oretz misyahadim. That's the Pashtas. They were Neskariv to Klal Yisrael. Many Goyim were Neskariv to Klal Yisrael. It's interesting that you see this idea that there was a Melchemes Amalek, and as a result of the Melchemes Amalek was a Gerus. Allah Belibi, I realized that this is not the first time that happened. The Gemara says in Zvachim, Vayishma Yisroi Kaya in Midyan, right? Yisroi heard what happened, and he came and he was Nitaisev to Klal Yisrael. He's the Ger, right? He's the Ger. Yisroi is the Ger. What brought him? So it's a machlekes. But the Gemara says, one of the sheet, I think Rabbi Yeshua says, Shama, Mashmua Shama Uba, Shama Melchemes Amalek. It's a shtickle like Maisa Avos, that the Melchemes Amalek happened, and a guy was Misyahed. And Dairos after that, Bimei Mordechai ve'Esther also, there was a Melchemes Amalek, and somehow Yidden were drawn to Goyim were drawn to Yidden. Which the truth is that there's something very, very, very teef about that, because be'etzem Amalek is be'etzem ra. His midah is v'layore elikim. That's why Acharisa Yadei Oivei. That's why Amalek can't exist la'asid lavei. But all the other nations of the world can exist la'asid lavei, because there's a oifen of their being Oived Hashem without ra. that they could use their koiches l'toiv. Each nation has their midah. They could use that midah for good or for bad. It's the poison of Amalek that Amalek injected its Sam HaMaves into the world that turns Umais away from Klal Yisrael. And it's a shtickle merumas in the Parsha Zachar that we lay in this Shabbos. That's v'haya behaniach Hashem alekecha mikol hayevecha misaviv. In other words, when the nations of the world are coming together, that's a siman that Amalek's effect is gone. That's the part, the Noharuel of Kol HaGoyim, that all the Goyim will be Makabel Malchus Shamayim. That's a siman of the lack of effect of Amalek. Amalek is the one that's moisif, that sinna, into all the Umais. Look at the story of the Megillah. Amalek hijacks Paras and uses Paras as his personal way of destroying. The whole Sudas HaChasheresh came from Haman. He took Paras had a midah. They were very, very megushim. That misurvalim kedaiv, the Gemara says. Paras's midah was they were very megushim, and Haman took that. He injected his Sam HaMaves into that and used it to try to destroy Klal Yisrael. When Amalek steps back, the nations of the world do the only logical thing, which is to be nimshach to Klal Yisrael, because that is the logical thing. That clearly we have the emes and the nimshach to Klal Yisrael. So, it's interesting that in the Haftarah this week, so Shmuel tells Shaul to kill out Amalek, and Shaul sends a message to the Bnei Hakeni, which is the mishpacha of Yisroi, to give them a little bit of a heads up that they should remove themselves so that they don't get killed. And if you think about it, it's a shtickle midah keneged midah. Yisroi haloi, he became close to Klal Yisrael and close to Avodas Hashem because of a Milchemes Amalek. It was a shmira on his dairos that when it was time for Milchemes Amalek that the Bnei Yisroi was saved. It's a clear midah keneged midah. I'll just end off with this zisa vart that I heard when I was much younger, b'shem of Moshe Wilson, Zechreinu Levracha, about what he used to say about Rabbi Me'amei Ha'oretz Misyahadim. So he used to, there's a tumult. There are many tzaddikim that say that it's very, very important for Yidden to go to the mikveh often. It's not our Litvisha Messiah, but there's certainly, parts of Klal Yisrael, Shvatim and Klal Yisrael, that hold that the mikveh is a heilig gazach, even Bizman Hazeh, that we're not being Isaac in Tum and Tyra, and even for men, that the mikveh is a heilig gazach. So apparently, I don't know the names, but apparently there were two Gedolim in Yerushalayim in a previous generation that were having this machlekes, like Meichat Heisi, like sending people to the mikveh. So one of the tzaddikim said, think about a mikveh. A mikveh can machen von a goy a yid. A mikveh can turn a goy into a yid. Alachas kama v'kama that it can make a yid into a besser yid. Right? That's what he used to say. So Rav Wolfson said, Rabbi Say, the Rabbi Me'amei Ha'oretz Misyadin. If Purim could make von a goy a yid, Avada can make von a yid a besser yid. Yashikaya.